Bible says that the good shepherd is willing to leave the 99 to come after the one that is lost. But if you're that one, what does it look like to actually walk through being lost and then finally finding where you need to go and how to follow where you need to go? I would love for you guys to stick around because we have a powerful testimony that's going to speak to that one. Stick around. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Christian Influencer Podcast. So grateful for your attention this morning. And we got a really good guest with us today. We got NAGEL is going to be here with us. And I'm hoping that you guys get as much out of this as I have just in the initial conversations. There's some good stuff coming. Brian, as always, we've got you here with us. Why don't you say hi to everybody?
Hey, everybody. I'm Brian Shirakawa, CEO and founder of Christian Influencer Convention.
And that's all we got for that, I guess. Okay, got it. So thanks for... Brian always likes to be a man of many words. Okay, so Shane, why don't we start with what is it that you do and what kind of services do you provide? You know, what is it that you've kind of found yourself filling in the role of, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I'm now publishing director for Anthem Country Club, so the Gargated section of Anthem. And basically, my job is to work with different businesses, advertisers who want to market their services for residents who live in Anthem Country Club. Nice.
Okay, and how did you kind of fall into that one?
So funny story. The owner of the company I've actually known for over 20 years. He lives up in Sacramento. We worked in a similar sales company together for about a decade or so. And then he called me up randomly and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a new job." And I was at the time. And so we did a quick interview and based just to make sure it was the right fit and got started. But had you told me, the reason it's a funny story is that had he told me 15, 20 years ago that we were working together, that I'd be working with him again, I would have thought you were crazy because he was probably one of the three people that I disliked the most in the world. And so,
he might see this, by the way.
And he knows that both of us had a very tumultuous relationship. And so, but then, time heals all wounds. And so we came back and now I couldn't ask for a better guy to work for.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so we're this is why I was telling you guys, we got some good stuff. So you're in sales and a Christian.
Yeah.
There's conflict in there a lot. Yeah, I'm sure that comes up a lot. So I'd love to kind of dive into that more, but why don't we start with, let's start with the Christian side of it.
Okay.
Sales obviously is something we kind of grow into and learn that we're either good at it or not, and then we dive in. But the walk with Christ is something that's a whole different avenue. And so why don't we start with, were you raised in the church, or did you come to Christ later in life, or how did that come?
So I was raised in the church. I was my parents both non-denominational Church of Christ, and so I went to church every weekend as a kid growing up. I got baptized when I was 12. When I was I lived a very Christ-like life up until I was 18, and so I didn't do any cuss words or anything. But from 18 to like age 40 was just debauchery for those 22 years, and so then I refound Christ back when I was at 40. I had a very, just basically hit my rock bottom moment in life. And Jesus was there. And unfortunately, I'm not proud to say, but God was, instead of him being my first place to look for, he was my last option. Mm-hmm. I tried to find help in all these other places, whether it be therapy, whether it be in getting high on weed and everything. I think I'm going to have this euphoric moment. And gonna have this come to God kind of moment and stuff, but nothing was helping me until I actually chose to surrender and just give my life to God.
Man, you just gave a sum up of something that I'm sure is like chapters of pain and frustration.
Oh yeah.
So let's dive in a little bit in there if you don't mind. I'd love to hear more. You said rock bottom, and I know that it's hard to share some of these things, but what does rock bottom look like for Shane?
So my rock bottom was at a time where I was in a men's group that we'd meet every Thursday or every other Thursday, I should say. And, it was every other Tuesday we met. And one of the questions, one of the leader of the group asked me one time was, I was in the process of going through a divorce, or in the process of trying to, my ex-wife did a felony assault on her oldest daughter. And so strangled her, got 2 felony counts for child abuse. And I had my kids with me. I have 2 boys who are now not ages 9 and 10. I had them with me for permanently for about 9-10 months during this whole time, CPS and everything. I had full custody of them at the time. And at the time I wasn't able to work. I was like just very, very anxious in thoughts, and I couldn't get out of my car to do any sales, even though I At one point in my sales career, I was making 300 calls a week, every single week for my company. I went from doing that to not even be able to take a phone call from my own mom. I get a phone call from her, and I just start shaking with anxiety. I have to like throw the phone across the room because I couldn't even speak. And he asked me a question. He's like, "What would happen if if your kids were taken away from you?" And that's, and of course, would you let that happen? And before I could answer, he answered for me and said, "Of course he would let it happen." And then he said some other stuff which I don't even remember, because at the moment in my head well, yeah, I would let that happen. That I'd be okay with my kids being being taken from me. And when I had that thought, that scared the crap out of me, because I was like, wow, I literally would be okay if my kids were taken from me. And that would not be enough for me to change my life around. And so that was the moment where it was my rock bottom, and I knew I needed to get help. I need to get help fast, because I need to start working, and I need to be able to be there for my kids, and I don't want them to grow up without a father. And so, and I was blessed in the sense that I had them full time with me at this time. So it's like something that I had prayed about for a long time was coming true, but I wasn't upholding my end of the bargain.
Boy, is that not true of all of us? How many times we pray for something and be like, yeah, God says, sure, you do your part, I'll do mine. And then he does his.
Right.
And it seems to stop there a lot of times. That's
Yeah.
rush. Okay, well, so you're trying to get back to work, and you're trying to get your kids straightened out with the home, getting, then there's a brokenness with the mom aspect in there.
Yep.
So how do you start walking through such, I mean, because you're starting almost at a no start.
Yeah.
So how do you say, okay, well, what's the path forward, and how do you start taking the right steps?
So I stopped smoking weed in February. I never smoked weed until I was about in my mid-20s, and then I was using it more as an addiction, as a crutch. I was definitely abusing it. It wasn't just using it here and there. I was smoking like 7, 8, 9, 10 bowls a day, every single day.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I was going through. I was a regular at the dispensary,
Oh, jeez.
and everything. And
First
so,
name base. Shane's back.
right?
Hey!
Yeah, we just saw you yesterday.
Oh, gosh.
I was buying, what it was, grams and everything, and just going through weed all the time, thinking I was going to have a euphoric moment that way, and it just wasn't happening. And so I stopped smoking weed in February of 2023, so about a little over about 2.5 years ago now. And then in about I started going. This whole time I've been going to church at Central for about 7, 8 years. My ex-wife, that was one of the two things that I'm very grateful for her for, is that obviously my sons, I wouldn't change a thing, because even if I knew now what I knew, even if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't change it, because I wouldn't have my kids. Even if I got with someone else, they wouldn't be who they are. They'd be someone else also, and I wouldn't change that for the world, or them for the world. But also, she's the one who got me into Central, and so I was going through their divorce and separation and everything. I was going to Central, no pun intended, but religiously every single week. And I went there about 6 years, and in that 6-year span, I couldn't tell you one person who went there also, except for the preacher. Other than him, I didn't know anyone else there. I'd just show up right when service started and leave right when service ended. And eventually I started praying, like, God, show me, open a door for me, open a window for me, just crack the door open for me, just something to let light through of where you want me to go and what do you want me to do. And I heard Judd, the minister at Central, say we have this program called CR, Central Recovery, and so it meets on Tuesday nights, and just a place where it's okay not to be okay, and you can get better. And it's kind of a 12-step program, but it's not just for drugs and alcohol. It's for all types of, you have depression, PTSD, anxiety, like all types of illnesses and everything, mental illnesses, whatnot, going through trauma. And so hearing that, I said, well, all right, I'm going to go. So the very next Tuesday, I heard that on Sunday morning. The very next Tuesday, I showed up, went to the first newcomers meeting, and that was what's outside of my relationship with Jesus and God. That's the number one thing that's definitely has helped me the most, is getting plugged into Central. Now I have probably over 100 people at Central that I know. I can't walk through the halls without saying hi to someone, which is great. And that's just in the last 2.5 years. And so that's really the crux of what's really impacted my life the most. I stopped drinking alcohol. I had a relatively decent relationship with alcohol, where I wouldn't drink more than 2 or 3 beers. Because I used in my 20s, I was an alcoholic. I got 3 DUIs in my 20s. That was the only times. I mean, there was several other times where I should have gotten DUIs. I mean, I drove drunk probably over 2, 3, 400 times, and so. But there's 3 or 4 other times where I was, by the grace of God, stories that I had that I did not get hit with the DUI, and thankfully I never hurt anyone else. It never crashed into anything else other than wrecked my own car one time. And then the other 2 times was thankfully there's no damage. I just got pulled over and whatnot. But the one of the women at church who leads the CR program, she asked me, said, if you want to be a leader in CR, you can't be drinking at all. Like, would that be something you could do? And I said, yeah, because at this point I'd only been having a beer here or there. If being a leader and helping other guys go through this 12-step program means I can't drink anymore, then I'll stop drinking. And so it's been a year and a half. It'll be 2 years this October since I last had a sip of alcohol.
Awesome.
Wow.
And so and I've stopped all hard drugs. It's been this October will be 3 years that I stopped cocaine. I was doing shrooms. I did just numerous different things. Never did anything injection wise, but anything I could take, or orally stuff, I did.
Man.
So then you basically all drugs and like soft and hard, like your weed and whatnot, has been 2.5 years to 3 years, and then your alcohol stoppage is a year and a half ago. So you're basically just straight and narrow now, right?
For the most part, yeah. I don't do any of that kind of stuff at all anymore. So I say for the most part because I still drop a cuss word every once in a while here and there and stuff. I play flag football, and sometimes my adrenaline gets up and everything in the middle of the game. But I try not to do it when my kids are around watching me play and stuff. But it's I'm a much. If you would have seen me where I was even 5 years ago, especially 10, 15 years ago in my sales career, I was one of the top sales reps in my company year in, year out. I finished #1 in my company twice out of like over 80,000 reps. And so,
that's one of the fruits of the spirit that you're exuding now is self-control. That's one of the biggest fruits of the spirit, I believe, and love as well. But
I agree. Yeah. And so I went from having that sort of lifestyle to now my lifestyle is completely different from what it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
There's so many little points that you brought up in there that I'm baffled by. Like a lot of times people wonder if I start working towards something, how long is it going to take? And the best way I always heard it described was someone said, faster than you think, but slower than you expect.
Yeah, I would agree 100%.
And it was so cool because it's only in hindsight that you're like, man, it only took a few months. But live through those few months. Those are the longest months.
Oh, yeah.
So that's cool. But I love that you were able to push past that. And then you ended up also seeing the concept of how many people do we hear, I have a relationship with Christ, but that's between me and him, and I don't need anybody else, so I have my own personal, but that's just not the community that we're called into.
No, not at all.
And so I love that you stepped into the role and you were willing to, and you stepped in first as someone in need. Now you're someone who's leading.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a walking testimony. This is how discipleship is done.
Thank you. Yeah, all glory to God. It's been beautiful. I've been able to lead. I'm right now currently leading my second step study group of men going through it. We graduate in end of October. We'll be graduating.
What's the length of that?
The first one we did in 9 months or 8 months, and then this one will be 10 months.
That's dedication.
So and we show up every single Tuesday from 6:30 to 8:30.
Okay, that's incredible.
That's beautiful.
And so the only time I missed over the last 8 months has been once. Now is when I was up in Montana visiting my parents. Other than that, I've been there every single Tuesday, whether I'm sick or not sick or whatever it is. I make sure I have nothing else planned during that time. That's the most important thing. It's my recovery.
Beautiful. Okay, so you stepped into a different role. How are things now at home? Because that was obviously one of the biggest catalysts that sent you down this way.
Home is going great. So I now have primary custody of my kids. So I'm blessed for that. It's insanely hard to get primary custody of your kids in Nevada, especially as a father.
As a father, yeah.
And so I took my ex-wife back to court last summer, and thankfully she was actually moving up to Washington, and so it made it easy where all the information that we had as far as the child abuse allegations that she did and court docs and other CPS cases that we had against her and everything, we didn't have to use any of that for me to get primary custody because she was moving up to Washington anyways. And so me and my lawyer were able to put in, or my lawyer, I should say, was able to put in there that I can still use all that information if I ever take it back to court again to get full custody of my kids. And so, which is a blessing because had we used that information then, I wouldn't be able to go back and use that information a second
Double
time.
jeopardy laws.
Double jeopardy law, yeah.
Right.
And so thankfully I have all that I can go through. And then if anything else happens between now and then, I would be able to just add that on to what, evidence as far as getting full custody.
So God used what the enemy was using for evil and he turned it for good.
Yep. and ironically, another funny, again, you can't, in the midst of it, it's hard. You can't see the forest when you're in the trees. And 3 years ago, I was really hoping to move out of my house and get a new place. But this was in the market in Vegas. It was just crazy. One of my realtor friends, she had one home. She had over 72 bids on one home. And hers was the one that actually got picked, which is the only reason why she knew that is that the other agent told her that she had 72 denial letters to send out and everything. And so I remember I went to this one house and I was trying to rent it out, but they wanted me to pay, since I was in sales, I didn't have a dependable income coming in every single month. And so they wanted me to pay all, not only just all 12 months up front, but they wanted me to pay 15 months up front. Plus the deposit. So it was like $36,000. I'm like, if I had $36,000, I would just buy a house.
Right.
Just sit in my bank account. And so it was crazy. So I wasn't able to move in a new house. About 4 months later is when I lived in the same neighborhood as my ex-wife did at the time, just on opposite ends of the neighborhood. And when she strangled my oldest stepdaughter, who was, I believe, like 15 or so at the time, she came to my house and told me what happened and everything. And then I called CPS, and that's how the felony, all that got basically took place. But had I been able to move when I wanted to move, I even asked my stepdaughter. I was like, "What would have happened?" I still have a great relationship with her, with all three of my stepdaughters. And so I'm very blessed and grateful for that, also for that relationship with him. And it took a backseat for a little while we were the first divorce separation, but it came back around. But I asked her what would have happened had I not been in that house. If I was moved someplace else, what would you have done? And her explanation was I probably would have just ran away. I would have had nowhere else to go. And so thankfully I was still there where she was able to feel comfortable enough to come to my house and I was able to, call CPS, and that ended up being the catalyst that would help me get primary custody of my kids. My oldest two stepdaughters are now under full guardianship by their Nana. Has full guardianship with them, so they're no longer under the premise of their mom or anything at all, thankfully. And they both live here in Vegas, and we still live in the same house. I'm looking to move again, probably this spring. I want to get a house with a pool. That was one of my living in Vegas without a pool is hard. Especially when I had a house. Every house I've lived in before this one had a pool. So after 10 years of being used to having a pool in your house and not having a pool, especially when COVID happened, like everything else closed down, all you want to do is go swimming and not able to. And so I am looking to move another house, but it was a blessing that I didn't notice at the time, but I was really upset that I couldn't move into a new house. But like I said, it was a blessing in disguise that I couldn't.
Oh, that's so cool. God knew where he wanted you beforehand.
Yep.
That's beautiful. So I love the faith walk, and obviously it's helped with your home life and your family life. Let's switch back over to, okay, so now sales. Mm-hmm. I've done sales myself too, and I've actually had the occasional time where I've even walked away from a deal going like, you know what, that was a great deal, and I don't feel right.
Right.
So I mean, there's a moral compass that we live by that sometimes comes into conflict with, whether or not that's going to be the right deal. So how do you navigate those waters? Especially you were Wolf of Wall Street. You were the top of your game for the 2 years running. I mean, you've got over how many did you say were 800 or 80 people that were in the?
There's over 80,000 sales reps.
80,000, and you were dang. I mean, wow.
Yeah. So it was, and I had over 2,500 clients at the time.
I as a guy who's done sales, I can't fathom those numbers, and I don't claim to be good at it, but. Still, it's like, holy crap. Okay, so you've got some experience in this arena. Why don't you speak into, because there's probably a lot of people who sales might be something that they're considering, and they're frustrated about whether or not they can step into that arena and still keep, their faith intact.
Right.
So how would you answer those people who are struggling with that?
I love sales. I wouldn't choose anything else but sales. I always told my parents if I had to go to a 9 to 5 type of job and sit at a desk all day, I would just that would not be the life for me. That would be so hard to do. A lot of it had to do because probably I have ADD and everything or ADHD, and so I get sidetracked so easy by squirrels and everything else that I need to be able to travel and go around town and everything. I really enjoy that, and I love just meeting new people on a daily basis. Even though what I do is very similar on an appointment by appointment basis, the person's always different, and so I'm always learning something new. Whether I was in those sales, doing the sales I do now, but I say as far as the moral integrity is really just people always say it's a win or lose situation. Either one person wins, another person loses. Right. I'm a believer where it can be a three-way win situation, where all three of you are winning at the same time, where that customer is getting either a great product, a great value, something that, the product I used to sell, it was a tangible product. And so it had a forever warranty on it. It lasted for a very, very long time. And if it didn't last, then you get it replaced for free. Basically, it was kind of like similar to that of like Snap-on tools. It wasn't that company, but it was similar to that kind of warranty. And my paycheck that I make, whether I make $50 from it or $500 from that sale, I'm going to spend that money within a week or 2 weeks on bills, food, groceries, whatever it might be. At that time of life, drugs and stuff, alcohol, and everything. Call it was, yeah. But that person's going to have that product forever. And so even though if I'm making a great commission on it, they're still getting the better end of the bargain. And then the company's making a great bargain also because they're moving, I'm helping them move product and everything and create more customers that they can. I sold my client list to another rep several months ago in January, actually, of this year. And so he's taken over my entire 2,500 person client list. And I was able to sell that to him at a good value for him, good value for me. He's already almost made his money back on it and everything. But I have a residual check that he sends me every month going forward. So I still get income from that for the next 2 years or so, basically. And so it's a blessing for me also to get that amount coming in every month. But it's a blessing for him because he gets I don't know how many customers he had before, but to add 2,500 new clients is a big thing.
Yeah, no kidding. And if there's one thing that I did learn in sales, it's that sales is not about the product; it's about the relationship.
Yeah, yep.
So, and if there's one thing that can teach us how to have relationships, it's Jesus. Christ. Yeah. So beautiful. Well, okay. So as we, I'm trying to keep an eye on the clock. I want to make sure we always honor this. But you've got such a unique perspective because you've got addiction things that you've overcome. You've got family brokenness that you were able to reconcile. You've got moral issues within the arena of your occupation. I mean, this is it's like this is literally life-changing stuff.
Thank you.
How would you give the encouragement? Because there's people who they're at their rock bottom. They're at their rock bottom, and it might not be Shane's rock bottom, but rock bottom is rock bottom.
Yep.
And I once heard a really cool description. I think it was a pastor. I think it was Pastor Kevin Oder, and I believe he was at Canyon Ridge when I heard this one. But he said that in the concept of recovery, a lot of times people try to just catch and hold the person who's falling, but that's not always the correct way. He said sometimes in order to have the rebound, they have to hit.
Yeah.
And you hit, obviously, but then you bounced. So I think that's where I'd love to really hear your perspective is how do you get the difference between now that you're helping people? What's the difference between saving them and becoming the enabler versus the one who's going to know how to lead them in a way where they can start walking hand in hand with Christ their own way and not relying on you?
Right. I think I can't remember who said it, but I remember the story was, hitting rock bottom is basically the same thing as this guy was saying a story of how him and his friends were swimming in a swimming pool and wanted to see who could get out of the water the highest. And all of them could get, so high up and everything. This one kid went down to the bottom of the pool, sprung himself up from the bottom of the pool, and he went, heads and shoulders above everybody else. It was where his waist was up out of the water. And, like you alluded to, you have to sometimes not just hit rock bottom, but use that rock bottom as a springboard to spring yourself up. And then if you are just tiptoeing at it, you're never going to get that spring that really catapult yourself out of where you're at. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's not one of those things. Like I said, I stopped doing hard drugs in October. I stopped doing weed in February. I stopped doing alcohol the following October. So it wasn't like I just stopped everything and like lived the Christ-like life right away.
Right.
It was a process. And so, it's hard to do in the midst of it because it is a process and you just want it to be done with. I remember when I started going to therapy, I've been going to therapy for about 2 years now. And I don't even remember saying this until my therapist said that she remembers what I said to her. And she asked, like, why do I want to go to therapy? And my response was in just a very dejecting voice was, I just want to get better. I just want to feel better. And that's really what I wanted. And I started seeing her in like March or April of about a month, literally about a month or 2 weeks before I started coming to CR. But I'd say for people who are in that spot, it's just you have to want it. And that's one of the things they talk about in addictions and everything. Also, if you're a person with alcohol or drug addictions or other things, they have to want it more than someone else wanting it for them. Because you can't help them unless they help themselves. And so I was at a place where I was able to, I wanted the help and I was searching for help and I needed the help. And I was basically surrendering to God. And that's probably the biggest thing is just surrendering, which is hard to do because we're taught in this world that, you got to have control. You want to be in control, be in the driver's seat.
Right.
When I was in my sales company previously, my 3 words that I would say the 3 best words one person could say is I did it. Very, egotistical and everything.
Sure.
And realizing that it's not I did it, it's God did it. And so surrendering that to Him and giving all the glory to Him and not because, who better or who would you rather be in control of your life, like myself or the Creator who made everything?
Right.
That's a much better person to put in your life.
I once was having a conversation. I said, if I have to choose between who's going to be the best guy to fix a car, I think the guy who built it in the first place might be the first place I would start.
Yeah.
Because he knows every nook and cranny. He designed the whole thing top to bottom. He knows exactly how it's supposed to work.
Right.
Doesn't mean mechanics can't make jimmy rig stuff and still kind of get by. But if you want it to work the way it's supposed to, you got to use it the way it's designed.
Yep.
And so I love that you're bringing that one up. And I'm also hearing the pride comes before the fall.
Oh yeah.
Thing too.
Yep.
Okay, so I want to. I still have enough time, so I want to get your input on this one. There's people who they've overcome. They're starting on this journey. They're seeing some of the results. Relapse is a very real danger. How do you step into keeping them grounded on where they're heading versus instead of going back to where they were? Because I mean, even after they left the promised land. The Jews just witnessed the sea part, dry land, a flaming thing come down and stop chariot.
Right.
You watched this, and yet still here you are just a little while later building a golden calf and worshiping it. How do you stop
and
that?
lamenting that as slaves they were still able to have milk and honey.
Right, yeah. Right. They're like, well, it's just because I'm tired of the food, so it's, but the thing is,
you had the free manna that was coming out of the ground.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But that's the human part of it. That's the flesh. And so we definitely do have to fight that demon. So how do we navigate that one? And what would you speak into the people who are really trying to say, I want to stay with this, but man, the draw is hard to go back?
3 letters is they talk about it all the time in CR is KCB, which is keep coming back. And you have to keep coming back week after week after week, because the moment you think, oh, I got it, I can do this on my own now, and I'm going to miss this week, I'm going to miss that week, and all of a sudden 1 week becomes 2 weeks, becomes a month, becomes 6 months, and then the ministers at CR and the pastors at CR, they've been around a lot longer than I have, and I've seen it happen myself too sometimes, with a couple times. But they'll say how these people went to CR, got better, and then 6 months later they stopped going, and then you find out they OD on something, and it's just that's the thing. It's like they stop. It all comes back, or not to say it always come back to this, but many times it comes back to they stopped coming back. They thought that their recovery was in their hands, and they no longer thought it was in God's hands. And so being able to, I don't see myself, I don't know if I'll ever stop going to CR, just because even regardless if I'm leading a step study or not, just going to open share and being part of the group. I had so many friends in CR, and so I get to hang out with my friends, see my friends on a weekly basis all the time, which is great. And I'm able to cultivate that relationship with Jesus and with God in that presence. And it keeps me grounded knowing that as long as I'm coming back every single week, I have a lesser chance of falling back to like, well, I can have one drink, I can have one smoke.
Yeah.
Because one never turns into one. It always, it's like it's like the Pringles commercials. Once you pop, you can't stop.
Right.
So that's what
They're not a sponsor.
Yeah,
no
I was
sponsor.
actually thinking that might be the first time I've ever heard Pringles as the addiction. I don't think I've ever heard that analogy. That was a good one.
Thank you.
Okay, so as we kind of round third here, there's an element that you've lived it out and then you just called it out that keep coming back. You had brought up like you were going to therapy for a few years. Are you still in therapy?
Yeah. Yep.
See, I mean, that's what's so cool about it. And I actually had to learn that similar lesson too. As ironing sharpens iron, the worst lie that we get fed by the enemy is when he convinces us, you got this figured out.
Yeah. Yep.
Like you're okay now. You don't need that humility anymore. You can accept your pride and say, yeah, you've got this all. And that's the beginning of the fall.
Yeah. I agree 100%. Yeah, like when they talk about having a sponsor, you never want your sponsor to say, I don't have a sponsor. If your sponsor doesn't have a sponsor, then that's a problem.
Amen.
Because that sponsor needs someone that's also sponsoring and helping them out in their life also. Because so I have a sponsor myself. I sponsor other men in the group and everything at CR. But and you don't have to keep the same sponsor indefinitely. You can change from sponsor to sponsor different seasons in your life. But it's important that you always have a sponsor.
Yeah, I think I once heard a concept like that was described the Paul Timothy model. It's there's always a Paul and there's always a Timothy, and if you're a Paul to somebody, you need to be a Timothy to somebody else.
Yep, amen.
So that's powerful stuff. Shane, thank you so much. Listen,
welcome.
I want to make sure that we honor the time here. But what would be your last parting words? I mean, what a story, right? Holy cow! You started from top of the heap, went all the way down to the very bottom that it could possibly, and now you're right back up in the clouds again. But this time you've got a whole different perspective and everything. What would be your final thoughts to somebody who's watching this and they're really on the cusp about, I don't know what to do to help myself, but I know I need help?
I would say one word: pray. Pray is the biggest thing, and then be silent after the prayer, because it's so easy to pray all these things. God, I want. And then immediately go off and do what we want to do. And God doesn't, he's not able to speak to you in that point. And I can't remember where in the Bible it talks about it, but, or who was on top. I think it was Abraham on the top of the mountain. It might've been someone else. Don't quote me on it. I'm still learning the Bible. But I remember there's a great earthquake, but God wasn't an earthquake. There's a great fire. God wasn't in the fire. He wasn't in the thunder. He wasn't in all these things. Yeah. And then there's a silent whisper. And it was in the wind, and then you had to lean in and hear God whisper, and that's the thing. God wants that close relationship with us. And He's not going to shout out to you. He's going to whisper to you because He wants to draw you near Him. And so I would say pray and pray for God to open doors and be open to surrendering your life to Him and letting Him guide you where He wants you to be.
Hallelujah! Some power in there. Well, if you guys have been watching, I hope you got as much out of this as we did. Shane, thank you so much for being here.
Welcome.
I mean, thank you for sharing so openly too. This is the kind of stuff a lot of people will hold in even after they're trying to recovering. It's hard to unmask and just be raw. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And then for those of you who've been watching with this, I hope you guys got some good information out of this. Brian, you got any parting words for our audience?
Yeah, I would say that what I learned from this is to take the initiative. Mm-hmm. Always say, you always have to choose God at the beginning of every morning. And with that, is the fruits of the Spirit, which is Galatians 5:22-23, which is love, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control, gentleness, and faithfulness. I did those out of order, but
that's it. You're damned entirely. You totally lost your salvation. You're gone. Yeah. So, but no, it's actually, and there's a lesson in there too. Actually, just between both of you guys were pointing out, I don't know all the Bible either. I mean, but that doesn't mean He can't work. Mm-hmm. You don't have to know the book front to back and memorize every verse. What you need to do is just be willing to listen to what He says.
Yeah.
Just make it simple. Don't make it complicated. Listen and follow. That's beautiful. Shane, thanks again for being here. For those of you who joined us, I want to thank you for joining us. I hope you guys got some good spiritual growth out of this. Remember, if you are someone who is following Christ, you're already an influencer. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast, hit those like buttons, and all together, we are CIC. God bless.